You'll have some people who think genres are just something like utopia or dystopia, like those are a genre. For me, obviously, we have our giant list of genres, and honestly, there's arguments to be made either way. But because we're working on multi-genre, and because dystopian novels are so popular right now, I just want to say a couple of quick things. We're going to start with this video. Make sure dystopia and utopia are the only thing on your screen. But they're pretty fascinating because in the world of literature, they're very popular. Thank you. Right there.
Wherever you
live, so much. Thanks.
You might have too much traffic or excessive pollution. Or the most fun place to hang out in your neighborhood might be the bingo and cross-stitch hut. Or you might live in a place with real problems, like persecution based on race or religion, or there's just a whole lot of war going on around you. Well, what if there was a perfect city, a utopia, no traffic, clean air, awesome hanging, a place where everybody is beautiful and always young. People of every race and religion get along. There'd be no war, just peace and happiness for everyone. Perfection, right? But wait, no traffic because no one has a car. What if we want to leave? Hi-ho, donkey, away! I'm sure it's got awesome hangouts, but we're tired of hanging out. Let's just get some fresh air. What if they bulldozed all the parks to make room for the movie theater, bowling alley, a Chinese fusion restaurant, and hibachi? What if the powers that be went even further to make society perfect? What if everyone had to wear the same perfect clothes? What if there's no race conflict because only one race is allowed?
Not okay.
And what if there's no conflict between people of different religions because the government allows only one religion? What if there's no war because there's only one government that controls every iota of every person's life? Well, something is seriously wrong with this picture, you know. We're beginning to think this place isn't a utopia at all. Maybe something rotten under all the...
Okay, so we'll stop that one right there. But a couple of fast things. So utopia, the idea is actually kind of nice, right? What if everything really was sunshine and rainbows and happiness? And my personal utopia, I could like eat as much chocolate as I want without gaining more weight, or I could have all the cats and people wouldn't think I'm even more crazy, right? Like that would be my utopia. But my utopia might be your dystopia. My idea of perfection might be you, like maybe you're really allergic to cats or you just don't like chocolate, right? So that's the problem. And that's why I think utopian and dystopian novels are so interesting. The person who came up with it at the very beginning of this idea of a utopia is kind of interesting. His name was Sir Thomas More. He lived way, way, way back in like Shakespearean England time. And he lived in a time where things kind of were a dystopia, that things were really bad. And he wrote his novel to escape his reality, which is what I think a lot of us do. Sometimes we write to escape. It is a classic novel, but it's one of the shortest ones. So if you ever want to try to read one of the classics, Utopia is a really good one to start with because it's really short, but it's also pretty cool. So sometimes you'll have a utopia because maybe it's like really amazing technology, or it's a utopia because there's no crime, or it's a utopia because everyone lives in harmony. And guys, Zootopia is called Zootopia because of the word utopia. They just took the U and replaced it with zoo because it's animals, right? It was supposed to be perfect. But just like the first sentence says, they usually go bad eventually. Please make sure this is the only thing on your screen, guys, unless you're finding a picture. The problem with utopias is just like I said. What if my utopia is your dystopia? So when you have a novel that starts great, the problem is when we try to foist our opinions on someone else and we try and force everyone to think just like we do. So that's when you sometimes will get a dystopia, where everything it's almost like you're living in a nightmare. And I think that dystopian novels got really, really popular because they were starting to mirror real life. That's often what people are doing, that they're writing to escape their reality, or they're writing to basically like comment on what's happening in the world. So you had this was my first year at Albion. There was this huge dystopian novel craze that really swept through the literature world, and we've kind of come out of it a little bit, but that's where we got Hunger Games, The Giver, Divergent, Maze Runner, even WALL-E the movie. All of that it was during that really huge craze. So the problem with dystopias are extremes. And in debate, this is another debate in creative writing, sorry, but there's these things called fallacies. Try to wrap your brain around this. It's a little bit of an advanced concept. A fallacy is a flaw in logic. So there's a specific kind of fallacy, which is a flaw in logic, called a black or white fallacy, where you'll get debaters who try and argue, it's this or this. And then they'll attack their opponent and say, well, you said something that isn't this or this. It's black or it's white. And that is a flaw in logic or a fallacy, because aren't there a bunch of other options? Like, why does it have to be BYU or the University of Utah? Like, what about Weaver State or SUU or any other college or university? That's an example of that either or thinking, and that's how sometimes utopias turn into dystopias. People are like, it's this or this? Why? Why are those my only options? Max, what did you want to add?
Oh, I was just gonna say, we had in the US last year,
Yeah. That they were trying to force you to say that there were only two options. Yeah, and that's a good real life lesson as well, that why are those my only options? Shouldn't there be others? So you have lots of options for the You Try boxes. You could tell me your personal utopia and your personal dystopia. For my dystopia, everyone would be really, really rude to each other, and they would constantly bully everyone all the time. That is my nightmare. So, but you can also look at real examples. You remember though, I already listed a bunch. You cannot tell me one that's already on the chart, okay? So give me an example for both. And while you're doing that, I have one more video that takes it to a little bit of a higher level, because I think all of us can wrap our brain around utopia and dystopia, but this pushes it just a little bit further. Yeah. Yeah, I do think that you could make the argument that it could be a utopia for some people, but do you remember how, like... And then, like, it also is, like, at the end, it kind of gets a little dystopian. Yeah, exactly. Good one.
Have you ever tried to picture an ideal world, one without war, poverty, If so, you're not alone. Plato imagined an enlightened republic ruled by philosopher kings. Many religions promise bliss in the afterlife. And throughout history, various groups have tried to exact paradise on Earth.
You could use that.
Thomas More's 1516 book, Utopia, gave this concept a name. Greek.
Like, guys, can you imagine living in the year 1516? Just picture that for 1 second, like how bad things must have been. Unless you were part of the nobility, you were probably a peasant who was barely scraping by. And that's why this idea of a perfect place, that's where it came from.
Or no place. Though the name suggested impossibility, modern scientific and political progress raised hopes of these dreams finally becoming reality. But time and time again, they instead turned into nightmares of war, famine, and oppression. And as artists began to question utopian thinking, the genre of dystopia, the not good place, was born. One of the earliest dystopian works is Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. Throughout his journey, Gulliver encounters fictional societies, some of which at first seem impressive, but turn out to be seriously flawed. On the flying island of Laputa, scientists and social planners pursue extravagant and useless schemes while neglecting the practical needs of the people below. And the who live in perfectly logical harmony, have no tolerance for the imperfections of actual human beings. With his novel, Swift established a blueprint for dystopia, imagining a world where certain trends in contemporary society are taken to extremes, exposing their underlying flaws. And the next few centuries would provide plenty of material. Industrial technology that promised to free laborers imprisoned them in slums and factories instead, while tycoons grew richer than kings. By the late 1800s, many feared where such conditions might lead. H.G. Wells' The Time Machine imagined upper classes and workers evolving into separate species, while Jack London's The Iron Heel portrayed a tyrannical oligarchy ruling over impoverished masses. The new century brought more exciting and terrifying changes. Medical advances made it possible to transcend biological limits, while mass media allowed instant communication between readers and the public. In all this Huxley's brave new world, citizens are genetically engineered and conditioned to perform their social roles. While propaganda and drugs keep a society happy, it's clear some crucial human element is lost. But the best-known dystopias were not imaginary at all. As Europe suffered unprecedented industrial warfare, new political movements took power. Some promised to erase all social distinctions, while others sought to unite people around a mythical heritage. The results were real-world dystopias, where life passed under the watchful eye of the state. and death came with ruthless efficiency to any who didn't belong. Many writers of the time didn't just observe these horrors, but lived through them. In his novel We, Soviet writer Yevgeny Zamyatin described a future where free will and individuality were eliminated. Banned in the USSR, the book inspired authors like George Orwell, who fought on the front lines against both fascism and communism. While his novel Animal Farm directly mocked the Soviet regime, the classic 1984 was a broader critique of totalitarianism, media, and language. And in the USA, Sinclair Lewis's It Can't Happen Here envisioned how easily democracy gave way to fascism. In the decades after World War II, writers wondered what new technologies like atomic energy, artificial intelligence, and space travel meant for humanity's future. Contrasting with popular visions of shining progress, dystopian science fiction expanded to films, comics, and games. Robots turned against their creators, while TV screens broadcast deadly mass entertainment. Workers grew in space colonies above an Earth of depleted resources and overpopulated, crime-plagued cities. Yet politics was never far away. Works like Dr. Strangelove and Watchmen explored the real threat of nuclear war, while V for Vendetta and The Handmaid's Tale warned how easily our rights could disappear in a crisis. And today's dystopian fiction continues to reflect modern anxieties about inequality, climate change, government power, and global epidemics. So why bother with all this pessimism? Because at their heart, dystopias are cautionary tales, not about some particular government or technology, but the very idea that humanity can be molded into an ideal shape. Think back to the perfect world you imagined. Did you also imagine what it would take to achieve? How would you make people cooperate? And how would you make sure it lasted? Now take another look. Does that world still seem perfect?
So, it's a little bit of a depressing, idea, but here's what I'll finish with. Because I do think that if you focus too much on the negative, then it can feel like it will never be good again. But for real, the idea of things always being on the brink of collapse, honestly, guys, that has always existed. Every generation has always felt like, you know what, this might really be the end. And it never has been. Because, and I was talking to my husband about this yesterday, I feel really, really lucky to teach at Albion because you are the kind of kids who actually care. And that you do force yourself to keep going even when things are tough. And that's why we won't really ever fall prey to a dystopian society, because of people like you who are willing to keep going and push through, and it matters. And so I like this lesson because it's such a real life lesson that we are part of that. So anyways, let's stop with Utopia and Dystopia, and then before I set you loose, so make sure you turn that in, everybody.